I didn't even know we were broken until she filed the paperwork. No warning. No, we need to talk. Just a crisp PDF labeled petition for dissolution of marriage, delivered straight to my military inbox while I was pulling third shift at a border checkpoint outside El Paso. My name's Alex Grayson. I'm 41. Former combat engineer with the Tennessee National Guard. 2 decades of service, a rebuilt spine, and a Purple Heart that my daughter once glued googly eyes on when she was 6. I laughed then. I haven't laughed in a while. Jill was my wife for 18 years. We met at a mechanic's shop in Murfreesboro. She'd spilled a Sonic milkshake on her carburetor and swore the car was possessed. I fixed it in 20 minutes. She kissed me in 15. It was fast, stupid, and the kind of messy love you only think will save you. Our daughter, Kyra, turned 16 2 weeks before I deployed. We celebrated with sparklers in the backyard and a lopsided cake she baked herself. She told me not to cry. I told her not to crash the car. She gave me a handmade card that said, "I'll miss you even when I pretend I won't." 6 weeks later, Jill ghosted me. No phone calls. No video chats. Her voice just disappeared. I sent gifts, a bracelet for Kyra, a new security camera for the front door, chili mix for Jill because she hated Texas food. No one responded. Then the email came. 3 sentences long. I've filed. It's done. Please don't come back until the paperwork's finalized. She didn't even sign it. I spent the next 2 nights sleeping on a folding cot in the watchtower, pretending I'd pulled extra duty. The desert wind sounded like someone whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I replayed everything, down to her last hug. Was it tight? Was she distant? Did she know? I started doubting things I used to trust without thinking. 2 months later, I was honorably discharged. My back had finally given out, and the army doctor looked me in the eye and said, "Time to go home, soldier." I didn't tell him I wasn't sure where that was anymore. I drove the whole way back to Tennessee. No music. Just the sound of the tires chewing asphalt and my thoughts trying not to spill. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. The wind chimes were gone. Jill loved wind chimes. We had 3. One made of old spoons. One made of seashells from a trip we took to Gulf shores. One I bought her on our anniversary. All of them gone. The porch looked empty, like it forgot who lived there. I didn't have a key. The locks were changed. No barking. No dog. No laughter. No sound of Kyra blasting Taylor Swift from her bedroom and singing off-key. Inside, through the front window, I saw movement. A tall man, unfamiliar, setting down a backpack. A woman, too, younger maybe, or just thinner than Jill. She walked like she owned the place. I pressed my palm to the glass and saw it. A pair of running shoes that weren't mine. A framed photo of 3 people on the mantel, none of them me. And then, a receipt. Tucked under the doormat like junk mail. It was from a clinic in Nashville. Patient name, Margaret Avery. Diagnosis, paranoid delusions. Group ritual regression therapy. My throat closed. Margaret Avery was Jill's mother. She died in a house fire in 2006. Or at least, that's what Jill told me. I didn't knock. I didn't cry. I got back in the truck and drove 2 blocks away before pulling over. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. From confusion. The kind that makes your skin feel too tight. Because now, I wasn't just wondering what happened to my wife. I was wondering if anything I believed about her was ever real. I parked behind the old VFW building and just sat there, watching my hands twitch on the steering wheel. For a while, I convinced myself it had to be something else. Maybe Jill rented the house to friends while the divorce processed. Maybe that receipt was for another Margaret Avery. Maybe the silence, the lies, the cold message, maybe it was stress. Grief. A breakdown. I'd been gone 6 months. People change. But I hadn't imagined the photo. I hadn't imagined the shoes. The next morning, I tried to call Kyra. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. And again. On the 4th try, the line didn't even ring, just disconnected. I texted. Baby girl, I'm home. Let's get burgers and talk. I miss you. Nothing. I drove to her school. The secretary blinked at me like I was a ghost. Kyra Grayson isn't enrolled anymore, she said. What do you mean not enrolled? She shrugged. Mom came in mid-semester. Said they were homeschooling her now. Private religious curriculum. My stomach turned. Jill had never once mentioned religion in 16 years. Not even grace at Thanksgiving. I drove home, if I could still call it that, and watched from across the street. They'd painted the mailbox. The backyard gate was gone. Someone had planted lavender near the porch, but it looked artificial. Too precise. Too curated. Like someone tried too hard to make it feel peaceful. I waited until they left, then crept around back and checked under the porch steps. My old army ammo box was still there. Inside, our wedding photo, Kyra's first lost tooth in a Ziploc, and the emergency copy of the house deed I'd stashed years ago. Except, the name on the deed was changed. Primary owner, Jill Avery Grayson. Secondary trustee, Dr. Kenneth Avery. Avery. Her maiden name. And his name. A quick online search gave me a sinking answer. Dr. Kenneth Avery, Ph.D., specialist in adolescent psychology, published several papers on memory suppression and identity reprogramming. He looked just like the man from the window. One article featured a picture of him speaking at a retreat in 2017, right next to Jill. Smiling. Like siblings. I sat in my truck and stared at the screen until the battery died. Jill never told me she had a brother. Later that week, I ran into Mr. Landers, our neighbor from 2 houses down. A retired barber who'd always slipped Kyra candy when Jill wasn't looking. He stopped mid-step when he saw me. Alex? I thought you were still deployed. Came home early. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, quiet. Listen. I saw your wife here a lot the past few months. But she wasn't alone. I nodded. Yeah. New boyfriend? He hesitated. I don't know who they were, son. 2 men. 1 woman. Scarred face. Always came late. Stayed long. They'd leave carrying boxes. Sometimes. Kyra left with them. Scarred face. Boxes. My daughter. Something deep in me folded inward. Not broke, folded. Like a paper soldier. Clean, sharp, bloodless. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. But because I finally understood this wasn't just a messy divorce. This was something built. Planned. Systematic. And whatever it was. They were trying to erase me from it. I returned to the house one last time, broad daylight, middle of the week. I parked far enough away not to raise suspicion, but close enough to see the driveway. No cars. No movement. The back door key was still hidden under the gutter rock. Muscle memory. I let myself in. Everything was sterile. Too clean. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and dried sage. Furniture was new. Walls repainted. The fridge was empty except for almond milk, ginger root, and something in a glass jar that looked like pickled flowers. No notes. No family calendar. No signs of Kyra. But in the laundry room, behind the water heater, I found something that didn't belong. A yellow folder with a rubber band around it. Inside. A list of dates, marked with TR and RNW in Jill's handwriting. A signed intake form from a Center for Feminine Renewal, with Kyra's name on it. A typed treatment schedule, spiritual regression, herbal sedation, lunar fasting. And one photograph, Kyra asleep on a white cot, hooked to something that looked like an 4. Her hair was cut short. Her wrists were bandaged. My breath left me. Not in gasps, just gone, like it had stepped out of my body. I dropped to the floor and sat there for what felt like an hour. My girl. Sedated. In some forest center. And Jill. She called that healing. It was around that time I remembered something I'd forgotten for years. Back in our 3rd year of marriage, Jill had a breakdown. Slit her wrists in the tub while I was at work. I found her barely conscious, the water pink and cold. She survived, but never talked about it again. Just started seeing a private psychiatrist her cousin had recommended. She never told me his name. The dots connected. Kenneth Avery. Her brother. The one I never knew existed. The same man running this operation with her mother, the one I thought died in a fire. I drove to the Nashville address listed on the folder. It wasn't a clinic. It was a quiet house with blackout curtains, wind chimes, and a handwritten sign that read, "Only those without ego may enter." I didn't go in. Not yet. I took photos. Sent the documents to a retired JAG officer I knew from Fort Campbell. Told him everything. He didn't ask if it was real. Just said, start keeping records. Everything. Time, place, names. This smells federal. That night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. A woman's voice. Hoarse, low, strange. She's not your daughter anymore. No name. No callback number. Just static after that. I replayed it 3 times. Each time, I felt something tear deeper inside. It wasn't just about Jill anymore. It was about Kyra. And what they were doing to her. The next day, I cut my hair, changed my plates, and packed my truck with surveillance gear, a prepaid phone, and all the files I had. If Jill wanted to erase me, she'd have to work harder. Because I was going to find my daughter. And I was going to bring her home. It took me 12 days to find the center. Not the house in Nashville. That was just a decoy. The real facility, the one listed under a shell nonprofit, was 3 hours deep into the Smoky Mountains, hidden behind an eco-retreat and a yoga camp. No road signs. Just a gravel turnoff, a rusted gate, and a wooden plaque that read, "The renewal path, rebirth begins where the Father ends." I parked half a mile away and hiked in at dawn. The air was thick with pine and smoke. From the tree lean, I saw a tall structure wrapped in white fabric. It looked like a chapel, but there were no crosses, only circles, runes, and what looked like paintings of women with their eyes closed. I watched for hours. Women in beige robes walked in silence, heads lowered. No phones, no talking, just ritual movement. At one point, 2 of them led a girl out onto the grass. It was Kyra. She didn't look like herself. Her hair was buzzed close to the scalp. She moved slowly, like her limbs were too heavy. A woman guided her by the elbow, whispering something in her ear. Kyra didn't respond. Her arms hung limp. I took photos. I filmed. I whispered her name once. She didn't flinch. That night, I slept in the truck. I didn't dream. Just lay awake replaying every bedtime story I'd told her, every softball game, every late-night drive for milkshakes. I wondered if she remembered any of it. In the morning, I went to the sheriff's office in the nearest town. Showed them the folder, the footage, the signed intake form. The deputy on duty gave me a hollow look. Said it was a civil custody matter, not criminal. Told me to take it up with family court. I wanted to scream. Instead, I thanked him and walked out. 3 days later, I met with the JAG officer, Don Landry, at a diner near Knoxville. He looked over everything, quiet and slow. Finally, he said, "You're not just dealing with custody. You're looking at conspiracy, unlawful confinement, and possibly medical fraud." He handed me a burner phone and gave me a contact at the FBI. You didn't hear it from me. Back in the woods, I planted motion sensors and a hidden cam pointed at the chapel entrance. The footage showed rotating cars arriving late at night. Girls getting dropped off. None getting picked up. Each clip felt like another needle under the skin. Then came the moment that broke me. On a Thursday morning, Kyra was led into the forest by two women. They had candles, herbs, and a bowl. They sat her down and began what looked like a chant. She was barely conscious. Her head bobbed with the rhythm, her hands twitching in slow patterns. One of the women, older, lean, with silver hair, kissed Kyra's forehead and whispered something I couldn't hear. I knew that face. It was Jill's mother. Not dead. Not burned. Alive. And standing over my daughter with a bowl of God knows what. My vision blurred. Not from tears, but from something worse. A numbness that settled behind the eyes. I couldn't call it grief. Grief is what you feel when something dies. This was different. This was watching someone kill what you loved, slowly, under the banner of salvation. And still, the world looked on like it was nothing. Just another alternative therapy. Just another silent girl on the grass. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. That's not how you fight something like this. You collect. You document. You wait. I knew they were watching the road. So I circled the property from the woods and waited for the change of shifts. That's when I saw Jill. She was standing near a fire pit in a clearing behind the main building, barefoot, arms crossed like she was listening to something distant. She wore the same kind of robe the others did, soft beige linen, loose at the shoulders. Her hair was longer, streaked with gray now. She looked thinner. Hollowed. She didn't see me at first. I stepped out just far enough to cast a shadow. She turned. She didn't flinch. Didn't gasp. Just stared. Like she'd been expecting this. I didn't speak. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and dropped it on the ground between us. She looked down, then back at me. "That's footage," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Of you. Of her. Of that thing your mother's doing." Still, no reaction. Just a small tilt of her head. Like I was describing someone else's life. "I don't know what lies you fed her. But Kyra's mine. And I'm not leaving without her." She finally blinked. Then, softly, almost kindly, she said, "You never understood what she needed." That line. As if this was care. As if sedation and chance and isolation were love. She moved closer, kneeling to pick up the flash drive. I let her. My phone was already recording the interaction. She said, "We're healing her from the sickness of paternal conditioning. You put your war into her blood, Alex." There was no point in arguing. I stepped back. "You erased her records. Changed the deed. Filed a false threat report about me. You built this thing in silence. But now you're exposed." She looked at the trees behind me. Her voice changed. "You shouldn't be here." I turned and saw two of the robed men approaching slowly, their posture calm, like nothing was wrong. But I recognized one of them. Kenneth. Her brother. The doctor. I didn't wait. I backed away toward the tree lean. "I've got people watching this place," I said loud enough for all of them to hear. "And next time I come back, it won't be alone. They didn't follow. Back in my truck, I uploaded everything, photos, videos, audio, into a shared drive and sent it to Don Landry. I flagged the footage from the ritual and the clip of Jill's words. That night, Don called me from a secure line. The FBI had opened a file. They were watching now. And just like that, the wall of silence started to crack. The next day, I received an anonymous envelope at my motel. Inside was a copy of Kyra's original birth certificate, and a note. She asked for you. Before the fasting. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. That was my daughter. Still in there. Still reaching. And I would not let her vanish. The day the raid happened, I wasn't there. The FBI said it was safer that way. Cleaner. No claims of violence or provocation. I watched it all from a parked car on a ridge above the valley. Black SUVs came in silent, fast, from both sides of the property. No sirens. Just movement. Like a storm rolling in with no sound. It took less than 15 minutes. They pulled out 32 people, staff, patients, and what they called voluntary participants. Kyra was the last one. She walked like her bones were borrowed. Dressed in white. Pale as frost. There was a moment when she looked up at the hill. I stepped out, just barely. Her eyes met mine. Something flickered. Recognition. Then gone. A medic led her away. I wasn't allowed to approach. They said she needed to be evaluated. Time, they told me. It's going to take time. That night, the motel room felt too quiet. I sat with the flash drive in my hand, not knowing if I should burn it or frame it. Everything on it, the chants, the rituals, the sedated girls, was already with the FBI. But it felt like a ghost. A few days later, I was allowed to see Kyra in a clinical recovery unit. She sat on the other side of a glass divider, hands in her lap, fingers twitching against her jeans. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just stared. Then she said, slowly, "Do you still drive the red truck?" My heart cracked in a way I didn't know was possible. I nodded. She blinked, hard. "I don't remember the dog's name." "You named her Star," I whispered. "Because she had one white paw." Kyra closed her eyes. I thought maybe I dreamed that. The visit lasted 15 minutes. She barely spoke again. But I didn't care. I had seen her. She remembered something. That was enough to keep breathing. Everyone had advice. Therapists. Agents. Lawyers. Give her space. Don't push too hard. Focus on stability. They meant well. But none of them knew what it felt like to hold the memory of your child in one hand and the blankness in her eyes in the other. Jill was arrested. Charged with conspiracy, endangerment, medical fraud, and more. Kenneth too. Her mother pled mental incompetency and was transferred to a high-security psychiatric ward. People asked if I felt vindicated. Like that was the goal. But justice doesn't bring back time. It doesn't give you back the missing birthdays or erase the look of confusion in your daughter's face when you say, "I love you," and she blinks like it's a foreign word. I moved into a small apartment outside Nashville. I didn't take anything from the old house. Not even my tools. The walls were bare. I kept the lights low. Just enough space for me, a mattress, and a folding table. Some nights I sat in silence, wondering how I didn't see it coming. Other nights I told myself that love is just another name for faith, and sometimes, faith makes you blind. But slowly, piece by piece, I started rebuilding. Not for closure. For Kyra. Because one day, she might remember a man with calloused hands who made her laugh when she skinned her knee, who never missed a game, who once let her glue googly eyes to a medal because it made her smile. And that memory would matter. Even if everything else didn't. 6 months later, Kyra moved in with me. Not all at once. The courts called it conditional reunification. Weekly visits. Supervised phone calls. Regular check-ins with a trauma therapist. But over time, she started bringing more than just a backpack. A sketchbook. A hoodie. Her pillow. One day she asked if we could get a dog. We went to the shelter the next weekend. She chose the smallest mutt there, nervous, jumpy, half-blind. Named her Dot. Said she didn't want anything too perfect. The old apartment was too small, so I found a place with a yard. Nothing fancy. Peeling paint, old plumbing, a creaky porch swing. But there was sunlight in the kitchen every morning, and that felt like a miracle. Kyra didn't talk much at first. She had trouble sleeping. Sometimes I'd hear her whisper in the dark, like she was checking if her voice still worked. She flinched when I opened doors too fast. But she started humming while washing dishes. Started organizing her books by color. Started painting again, strange shapes and twisted trees, but the colors were bold. Alive. One night, she left a note on my desk. I think I remember the lake house. The one with the ducks. I taped it to the fridge. Didn't ask questions. Just smiled. I went back to work part-time doing security installation. Quiet jobs. No big contracts. Just enough to keep the lights on. The army pension covered the rest. I fixed the porch, planted tomatoes in the backyard, started going to a Tuesday night support group for veterans. I don't talk much there either. But sometimes I listen to other men cry without shame, and it reminds me I'm not the only one trying to crawl out of something. The story made the news in pieces. A special report. A podcast. A few articles that hinted at a deeper web, then moved on when the headlines dried up. People messaged me. Called me brave. Asked me how I stayed strong. Truth is, I didn't. I broke. Quietly. In the way men are taught to, holding steering wheels too tight, staring at walls too long, clenching fists until the bones ache. Strength wasn't rage. It was keeping the door open for my daughter, even when I wasn't sure she'd walk through it. One morning, she sat across from me at breakfast, her cereal getting soggy. She looked up and said, "I think I remember your laugh." I nodded. "It's still here." She smiled. Small. Real. That night, I deleted the last of the surveillance footage from my hard drive. Burned the printouts. Let the past be what it was, ugly, wrong, and finished. I don't forgive Jill. I don't hate her either. There's just nothing left. She sits in a courtroom once a year now, while lawyers argue over sentences and competency. Her face doesn't belong to the woman I married. Kyra still has nightmares. But fewer now. Last week, she painted a picture of a treehouse. Said she wants to build one someday. I told her we could start this summer. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not fireworks. Not dramatic apologies. Just a girl painting her future, and a father learning to stay close without holding too tight. I don't need redemption. I don't need closure. I just need this. The sound of her footsteps in the hall. The way Dot snores under the couch. The sun hitting the kitchen tiles like it belongs there. And the quiet knowledge that, for the first time in years, I get to choose who has access to me. That's enough. That's everything.